Well, hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the Straight Outta Prison podcast. My name is James K. Jones, and this is my story.
And this is Haley Jones, and this is his story that has now become a part of my story.
And our stories are about to bump.
They are.
The stage is
I
being
was going to say collide, but
well, collide,
or intersect, bump sounds.
Collide, intersect, that's more like an educated teacher word.
A little edgy.
But I got a GD in prison, so I'll probably say bump.
Okay, our stories are about to bump.
But in the last episode, we just kind of told your story, how you ended up in Gardendale, Alabama in 2012 working for your dad.
Yes.
Everything that led up to that, and you were rocking and rolling, having a fun time.
It
marketing.
Was so interesting being on the other side of the story, because usually I'm the one asking questions.
Yes.
And I must say it was a little uncomfortable. And I even listened back and thought, like, whew, I need to...
You did good, though.
I don't know.
But one side note, I noted that when we do the editing on the podcast, I say a lot, because while I'm talking, like telling my story, I'll get lost and I'll say and I don't think there's ever been an that had to be edited from yours. But with that last episode, we had to edit out like 47 So it is different.
Surprise me, yeah.
It is different when you're not telling your story.
It is.
All right, so we're going to circle back in this episode and just go through the process of how I got to Gardendale, Alabama in 2012 for us to even bump.
Right. You gotta stop saying that. Right. Yeah, so this is fascinating because I got to Alabama and Birmingham, lived in Birmingham, but my dad had his agency in Gardendale, which really, and then when I started working for him, gave me an opportunity to kind of plug in and meet people. And and so you getting to Gardendale was another story because your restaurant was somewhere else in Birmingham, yeah. And so James K. Jones in Gardendale. Where do we start?
I guess at the beginning. I mean, I talked a few episodes back. Maybe it was season 3 of being in a car accident where I got hit by a drunk driver.
Right.
And somehow that changed my mind about fear in the future.
Yeah.
Because it was like I wasn't, it didn't scare me. Mm-hmm. Like I thought I was going to die and I was okay with that. Like I was Jesus, I trust you. But it changed my mindset going forward to like, why do I allow fear to stop me from doing the things I know I need to do? And we had, by that time, been in business in the Birmingham location for like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. And
had just reached a wall. I mean, it was a small space. We were doing a huge catering operation. We were, branched out into doing weddings and events. But it was so hard to work out of that small space. And I really wanted a restaurant. My dream was to have like a full service, come eat breakfast, come eat lunch, come eat dinner kind of restaurant. And that wasn't going to happen, number one, in that space because it was too small. And number two, because of the location, it was in downtown Birmingham, and people will come into Birmingham in the morning to go to work, 40, 50,000 people at that time, according to the statistics. But then they leave around 5 and they're not coming back.
Right.
So to have a successful dinner business, you needed to be somewhere else, north, south, east, or west.
I actually don't know that I knew that you wanted to have a dinner business.
Oh, yeah. It always bothered me that I didn't do dinner.
Okay.
And dinner's funner. I mean, lunch was, in the beginning, the first 4 or 5 years, it was nice to be free at night. But then ended up finding out I wasn't free anyways because we had catering. We were always doing something.
Right.
So I wanted a full-service restaurant. I mean, that was what I wanted.
Yeah. So I know that the beginning of the last episode when I shared mostly, you had talked about being lured to Gardendale. You did mention that.
I don't know if lured was the right question. I put out the...
right. You mentioned that, the 900% stuff.
Yeah, I put it out on a Facebook post on my Kairos Cafe Facebook page and just said, we're thinking about opening a second location. Would we want to go in the Birmingham area, north, south, east, or west? Right. And we got an overwhelming response from... It actually surprised me because I didn't really know many people in Gardendale. Yeah. They just went crazy. They were like, it was, I've never seen anything like it in business. And it was more than just lip service. I mean, our cafe and catering business, after putting that out, tripled. So we were just crazy busy. Like, people were coming. You know, it's only 15 minutes from Gardendale to downtown Birmingham on the south side where Kairos Cafe was. So, but they started coming. They wanted to know what kind of food, and they were trying to get me. They were coming at me, and it was so different from my first experience when we opened in Birmingham. If you go back to season 3 when we opened the Kairos Cafe in Birmingham, nobody knew we were there, and I had to go through. It was a hard process of just getting people to know that we were there. Mm-hmm. So this was different in that I felt wanted, and like it was crazy,
sought after.
Yeah, and it was more than just, oh, please come here and do your thing in Gardendale. It was, I started getting emails from businessmen that own businesses in Gardendale encouraging me. I started getting calls and meetings, people wanting to be investors. The mayor of Gardendale, Outta Phillips, he invited me, like publicly invited me to come up to Gardendale. So we set up an appointment with him.
How did he publicly invite you?
On their Facebook thing.
Oh, wow.
And after he made a public invitation for me to come to Gardendale, a reporter from the Birmingham News caught on to that and like, this is weird. Like there's something special about this happening here. This is weird. So she called and she wanted to do an article. And I said, I haven't decided. I mean, this was just 3 or 4 days after. And she said, well, we published a North Jefferson issue of the Birmingham News, and we'd like to put this on the front cover. And so I said, well, I think that's silly to do that because I haven't decided that I'm doing that. I just put some feelers out. It wasn't really, we're going to start tomorrow. Mm-hmm. But she said, this is a hot story up here, and I really want to do it. It'll be good for your business whether you did it or not. And so she came and did a huge cover story.
That is, us having started businesses, I can see how it's refreshing.
It was crazy.
To feel like you're being, sought after like that.
But, it felt good.
Yeah, of course.
But no, looking back on it now, I got caught up in the hype of it. And even Steve, he and I would have a big misunderstanding about this later on. After they did that article in the Birmingham News, I can remember where I was when we were talking on the phone. And he was still my business partner at that time. And he was like, oh, you got to do it now. You got to do it. You're in there. Your goose is cooked. You got to do it. And, I felt like that was another green light. He was my pastor. He was my business partner, all the things. So when we started that process, it was Gardendale. We didn't even look anywhere else.
So what was step 1? Was it like looking for the place that you would have it? Or was there another step before that?
Well, the mayor of Gardendale invited us up, me and Jeremy. And actually, by this time, my dad, we had rekindled a closer relationship. The year leading up to that, he had lived in the North Jefferson area for 20 years, and he really was encouraging me that was the way to go because they needed something like that up there. They had a lot of fast food, and something like Kairos would really blow up there. And when he found out that I was moving in that direction, he wanted to be involved.
Yeah.
So
how did you feel about that?
Initially, I didn't want him to be involved. But my dad, he comes across as a really great guy. I mean, he's a hard worker. He'll do anything.
Well, I would say in a lot of ways he is a good guy.
He is.
Yeah.
But, just our relationship was always strained.
Yeah.
And I think for him, like, it's hard to be, he's coming into an organization and a place where I'm the leader. And, it's hard for a parent to see their child as a leader. Does that make sense?
I don't think it's hard for all parents to see their child.
I think it was difficult for him.
Yeah.
Because he thought he would give advice and I would just take it. But by this time, I'm almost 40 years old. And he just didn't have a lot of influence with me.
Yeah. Relational capital, what my dad would say,
And so... But his wife, my stepmother, she worked for Breastco, that's Birmingham Restaurant Supply Company. She was very familiar with the restaurant business. She knew about trends and all things, and she got on board and was like, "This is what you need to do. Like this is popping. This is where it's at." So Steve called me in and basically was like, "Your dad is a really good guy, and this might be an opportunity for your relationship to heal. So why wouldn't you let him be involved?" And he was wanting to be involved to the point of actually working with us, and he wanted to do catering and and I was going to have to hire more delivery drivers. He wasn't wanting a manager job. He just wanted something to do because he's retired.
Right.
He had he did painting and stuff. But just on the advice of Steve, and Jeremy loved him and all my staff loved him, I just was like, well, maybe I'm being stubborn.
Yeah.
But I did have misgivings about, just getting involved, letting him get involved in my business.
It made you a little uneasy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But initially, when we went to set up a meeting with the mayor, I asked him to come with me and Jeremy, and he was so honored, and I love that part of it. It was neat.
Yeah.
And we went to you got to back up and know that I knew nothing of Gardendale.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anything about. All I knew was that it was a small town, and it was kind of Mayberry-esque.
Right.
And there was a lot of Baptists, and the Baptist church kind of ran things, and that was about all I knew. I had one friend, Charlotte Guffin, who sang in our wedding. That was a close friend. She was from Gardendale, so I knew her, but that was about it.
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody else I knew from Gardendale at that time. And you might say that's only 15 minutes north of Birmingham, but it is it's a tight-knit community, close-knit community.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And coming into it, I wasn't knowing what to expect. But the way that they opened their arms and was like, come on, we embrace you. And by that time, my story's public. They know I've been to prison.
Right.
But I think they're also attracted to the Jesus story and, how God transformed my life.
Right.
And stuff like that. So we came and we spent about 4 or 5 hours with the mayor. And he put us in his car and drove us all around Gardendale. And looking back on this, I'm like, I wonder why I didn't ask more questions. Because we went to closed, shuttered restaurant after closed, shuttered restaurant. And just to look at it as options.
So what does closed, shuttered mean?
Like businesses that went out of business.
Okay.
So there was a Chinese place that went out of business. There was a Mexican place that went out of business. There was like this meat and three cafeteria style place that went out of business. And it was just, for such a small town, for that many businesses to have gone under,
right,
it would seem that you would have questioned that.
Be like, yeah.
But those were the places he was taking me to look at.
Right.
But this was, just to be fair, this was around a little after 2010. So we had went through that Great Recession in 2008. So it was, there was that. A lot of businesses went under during that time.
Right.
So it wasn't totally, there were shuttered up businesses everywhere. We went through that process and spent the day. I settled on 2 that I liked. One of them had been a place called Max's Cafeteria in Gardendale. It had been like a bedrock of the community for years and years and years, but I think the guy passed away, and then somebody else tried to take it over and it didn't work out, so it was closed. And then there was a newer building down in a newer development closer to the highway that had been a Chinese place that I thought that could be a good thing to look at. But also during this time, I think this is important to interject into the story. Leonardo's, I had not been working at Leonardo's for 7, 8 years by that time, but I was still very connected to Mr. Folletta and to his business, and he would call me and ask my advice, and I would go in and help with stuff. And my mom took my job when I left, so she had been doing my job for all those years. And it was during that time between 2008 and 2010 that Leonardo's went out of business. The economy was part of it. There was some this is all Obama's fault, stuff like that going on. But I was watching that happen because I helped build that business, so I knew it inside and out. It was where they started raising their prices. They started not doing the things that they did to make them special. And I started noting the decline. And I went to him several times and talked to him like, Tony, you got to do something different. And I had actually been encouraging my mom for about a year that it looks like they're not going to make it. So you might want to start thinking about doing something different. But she was so connected to Mr. Folletta and little Tony and Boo, and that was her job, and she couldn't hear it. But it was during this time that they went out of business. And it was sad and it was devastating. But it was more so devastating for my mom because she had taken that on. I don't know if it was kind of like her identity. Like she loved her job there. She loved the customers. She loved what she did. She making money. And I was actually still living with her at the time when they went out of business. And she tried to find a job in Birmingham and do something different. But ultimately she decided she wanted to move back to Phoenix City with her sister and figure out what to do from there. So she moved back to Phoenix City during that time.
Okay, so remind me now your living situation. Were you living with your mom still at that time, like when Leonardo shut down?
I was.
Okay.
She came to I slept there That was about, I was busy. Then when we started this process with Kairos Cafe in Gardendale, I was always, I was never home. When she decided to move, I was not ready to get another house. I was kind of enjoying not having to keep up a household.
Right.
Jeremy and Tanya had bought a new house in Hoover, and they had a basement apartment that they remodeled. That was something that they wanted to rent out, but they wanted to rent it out to somebody that they knew because they didn't want just random people living in their house.
Right.
And actually, Shauna lived in that basement apartment for about a year and a half before she got married. And she got married and was moving out, and I was like, it was just like everything just worked out the way it was supposed to. Because I was like, they wanted like $500 a month. That's all you paid them. Separate entrance. Like I would never see them. I didn't have to interact. It was like a studio apartment, and it was honestly one of my favorite places that ever lived because it was big enough for everything I needed, but I didn't have any extra upkeep.
It's so crazy and strange, like the whole Shauna thing. It just won't go away. Like she moved out because she got married, and then you moved into where she was living.
Yeah. It is.
I guess it's just the whole family thing you were connected to. It's like you couldn't. I mean, there was just no separation.
Yeah.
There were so many links between Steve and Jeremy working for you. And
yeah, it wasn't just family. I mean, it was business. We did business. We went to church together. All of our circles. It was just all the circles were interconnected.
Right.
And so it made sense. But when that became available, I was like, I want that. That's what I want to do. I mean, it just made sense.
So your mom moved back to Phoenix City, then you moved into Jeremy and Tanya's basement apartment.
Yes.
Right after Shauna moved out because she got married. Mm-hmm. Life is moving on.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the Gardendale Kairos. Which building did you decide on? How did you move forward with that?
I couldn't make a decision. People were saying that the Max's Cafeteria had more historical value. It was across the street from City Hall. That was the heart of Gardendale. Mm-hmm. People knew the location. But when I met the lady that owned the property there, she was, I don't know, I just felt like she was sketchy. I didn't trust her. My initial, I got to be careful with her.
Right.
I mean, she was, to be fair, she was a young girl, maybe in her late 20s, early 30s. And she had inherited all these properties from her parents. Okay. She was managing these properties with her boyfriend, Breck. And
that sounds like a fully loaded...
Something about Breck that I didn't trust.
So it wasn't necessarily the girl that owned all the properties you didn't trust. It was the boyfriend, Breck.
No, it was both of them.
Okay.
They might as well have been married. Takes one to marry one, you know what I'm saying? There was just something underlying that I just got a bad... feeling.
Yeah.
I didn't something. I need to be very careful with these people. And the property was old.
Yeah.
So it would need just a complete overhaul, complete renovation. The Chinese place that I looked at was closer to the highway, it was across from Walmart, which, in any community, if there's a Walmart, there's going to be a ton of traffic.
Right.
Super Walmart at that. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I'm showing my age. They're all super Walmarts now. Yeah. They didn't used to be. There used to be just regular ass Walmarts. And then the super Walmarts were a phenomenon.
Okay, anyway.
But that was across the street from that. But when I went in and looked at it, it just didn't feel right. Mm-hmm. And it was set up in the kitchen was set up for Chinese food, which meant there was a bunch of stuff for woks and stuff. And I'm I don't know what to do with that. I mean, there was these huge flames and I don't even know how to start. I wouldn't even know where to start here.
Right.
My granny was coming over to stay the weekend, and she was so excited about this venture because by that time, in Kairos, things were named after Granny. I gave her a lot of credit, which was due to her. She taught me how to cook. And then probably the most famous thing we had were Granny's rolls with strawberry butter.
Which are, so good.
But when she would come to visit, she would sit in Kairos. She didn't want to, she used to come stay with me sometimes for a week. She wanted to go to work every day and just sit through the lunch rush and meet people. And it was awesome. So cute. She would just sit and people come and talk to her.
Yeah.
Because by that time I had a huge following and I talked about her a lot. But I took her up there and toured her around Gardendale, and she loved it. She was like, I feel like this could be your place. This could be your home. This could be where everything that you've ever wanted. And I was like, let's don't get carried away. We're talking about doing a business. I ain't talking about moving up here. But she liked the Max's cafeteria. She said it felt like a dream come true for me.
Wow.
So she actually made the final call on that.
Wow. Which is where Kairos and Gardendale ended up being.
Yeah. And then that would that would end up being a huge undertaking, and there was a lot of disasters that happened during that time.
Yeah.
But just because of the age of the building and the landlords were not good ones. And
these are the sketchy landlords.
Yeah.
You said,
I was right.
Do it anyway.
Well, no, I sought counsel. Steve told me I was being paranoid. The mayor vouched for them. They're reputable. They're all these things. And, but once I signed the lease, here we go.
Okay, so you signed the lease, and was there a timeline on this? Like, when you wanted to open, or like, what did you have to do? Like, what's the next step? You sign the lease. Obviously, you're starting to pay, so you want to get in there and start business as soon as possible.
Well, the lease that we negotiated, and I had help with that. I mean, my accountant helped me with it. Steve was in on that. The lease that we negotiated was I would pay the first month's rent, and the last month I would pay the first month's rent, a security deposit, and then just them knowing all the work I was going to have to do, they gave me 6 months to get open.
So 6 months, and you didn't have to pay during those 6 months?
Yeah. They gave me 6 months to do the renovations.
Right.
And the renovations were extensive because everything had to be basically gutted and remodeled.
And you had to pay for all that?
Yeah, and looking back on it now, I didn't understand leases and stuff like that. I didn't understand what I was signing, and I wish somebody else could have understood it for me. I mean, I didn't do it by myself, but they basically took no ownership of anything in the building except the outside. So anything that had to be done, I had to do it. And maybe this is worth noting and worth mentioning. The year before that, they went in, this young lady and Breck, and they reopened the Max's cafeteria and tried to make a go of it themselves. And failed miserably. I found out some stuff later on, like one of the biggest expenses when you're opening a food service operation is the plumbing and the vents in the kitchen, because that can run you, like you can spend more than you spend on a house getting those vents and stuff like that done. All the stuff was old, but she assured me that it had already passed code. But after we got open, I found out that none of that passed code, and that I was going to have to get a completely new ventilation system in the kitchen. I was going to have to completely rewire the whole building. I was going to have to completely redo all the plumbing. The bathrooms didn't pass code, so the bathrooms would have to be gutted and remodeled. We'd have to put in a handicap bathroom. I mean, I was in over my head, drowning.
But I know it's like hindsight's 2020, but like you always talk about trust but verify.
That's
when
now.
She said it passed the
That's
code.
2021. She would
this
be
is
one
of the lessons that helped you learn that.
She would be one of the main ones that taught me to verify. You verify everything, even if it's your mama.
Yeah.
Verify. Make sure, ask all the questions, understand.
Wow. So, in other words, what I hear you saying is that
I didn't know,
like thousands upon thousands of dollars that you didn't know.
Yes. I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
And I was depending, honestly, on Steve to know things that I didn't know because he was older than me and he knew stuff.
It's not always the case that the older people know more things.
No, and he does. He's a very wise man in a lot of areas, but I think business was not really his. He ain't supposed to be doing all that.
Right.
But here we are. We're doing it.
You've signed the lease.
So we're in and we're sucked in.
No turning back.
Well, you know how I am. Once I decide to do something, I'm going to do it.
Right.
But I did think, this is not good. But the people in Gardendale, while we were in there working, getting it ready, I would get sometimes 50, 60, 75 people a day come in asking, when are y'all going to open? And I got so tired of hearing, when are y'all going to open? When are y'all going to open? But it was a long process. We did most of the work ourselves the same way we did when we started Kairos Cafe. In the original one, Jeremy kind of took over and became like the contractor, I guess. And I ended up taking over a lot of his duties. Like I started doing a lot of the catering stuff so that he could work up there. And it was in this process as we were getting closer to an opening date that I made a hire that would be a huge part of our story.
Okay, before we talk about that hire,
yeah,
I want to know, where did the money come from to do all the things in this building that you needed to do?
Oh, originally, I had two I won't say their names, but I had two. One of them was a business person in Gardendale. I don't think he would mind. Jeff Dennis. He owns a jewelry store, and he's very committed to our community. I mean, I didn't know him at the time, but
we actually talked about him last episode. I did.
Yeah, he was the first one that reached out to me.
Right.
Like, what can I do to help? Like, it wasn't he made me want to come to Gardendale. Jeff Dennis did. Just the way that he reached out and wanted to be a part. We set up a meeting. He invested, and then I won't say any other names, but
so did people offer to invest, or was that something that
initially
you asked for?
I didn't ask for anybody to invest. They were coming to me, and which was neat. I felt like that's green light, go, go, go.
Right.
So, but once we got in and got underwater and it was a mess, then I did an investors meeting in Gardendale. I just did a community meeting. The mayor spoke at it. Jeff Dennis was there. A couple people came. There was maybe 100 people came. I did where we fed them dinner and just gave a proposal. I had people that had been investors originally in Birmingham that came and spoke. And I got a number of investors through that. Mm-hmm. And then it was a significant amount to start. And there was one guy that Jeff Dennis brought in that was what he did. He was an investor. That he put in a significant amount of money to get us started. But then I would have to go back to him several times and, ask for more. But it was pretty neat.
Yeah,
and
that's crazy. I mean, I can feel almost like you had all this momentum, especially people are like, what can I do? How can I help? And then...
Yeah, but then we got stuck because it was the same as it was in Gardendale. I mean, not Gardendale. We got stuck because it was the same as it was in Birmingham. You don't know what you know until you start.
Right.
Until you start digging up the field, you find out what's under it. And it went from $100,000 max to being about $378,000 to get that place open.
Holy cow.
But somewhere during the process, I found out that there are these new loans that they did where they would give you loans based on your credit card futures, like just based on your revenues and what you did. And I looked into it, like you didn't have to have collateral, you didn't have to have anything, but it was basically, there was zero interest, it was a flat fee. Like if we give you this amount of money, it'll be this plus this. And it would take a percentage of your credit card sales every day as you were doing business until the loan was paid off. So I was able to get a $100,000 loan based on the future. Right. Does that make sense? Which was, we thought it was great at the time, but it ended up, later on being very painful to deal with that. But.
So, I mean, but that is crazy, that number you just threw out. I feel like I need to clarify. The $378,000.
That was what we spent.
That's what you spent to just get the doors open.
To open the door.
Piping all the codes, get past all the codes. That's insane. Piping. Or whatever,
Piping.
I mean, that is
It was a
crazy.
lot. It was a lot. By the end of that undertaking, I was so exhausted. I mean... It was quite the process. And it was, we got all the plumbing done, we got the electrical, everything rewired, we redid the ceilings, we redid the kitchen, we repainted everything. And the 2 weeks before we were supposed to open, the HVA system went out.
Oh my gosh.
But they didn't, the landlord people, they didn't want to help me with that. So I was like, hold up, the AC unit's on top, it's on the outside. Like, I was stuck. Y'all stuck on this, and I got in a meeting between Breck and Steve, and he was being a dick. I'm like, I have already redone this whole. If we left right now, you could lease this out to somebody,
right,
for 4 times what I pay you in rent. So y'all are going to do something for me. Mm-hmm. So I forget what exactly happened. They were trying to offer. Like, he would say he needed to meet with his investor, and he would call me back or put me on hold, but I knew he was talking to her.
Right.
Because they own the floors 2 doors down. So I was like, I know you're sitting over there. Y'all are trying to act like y'all this big conglomerate corporation. I know it's just y'all two in there talking. He kept coming back with these things. But ultimately, Steve looked at me and was like, let's just do it. Whatever they want to do, let's just do it. I think they gave me another 3 months off my rent, but wouldn't help me with the AC at all. So I had to completely come up with another $30,000 to because you can't open a restaurant
No,
without
you
AC.
cannot.
No, I mean, not just that customers wouldn't like it, like the health department wouldn't let you open.
Yeah.
You got to pass all the codes. So that put us on pause till we could get that done. I had to go find the money to get it done, and then I had to find somebody to do it and do it quickly. And it kind of worked out, though, because during that process, my granny went to heaven, and it gave me that space of time to be able to deal with that. But we'll talk about a little bit more of that in the next episode. But
That's a lot, though.
It was.
I mean, the stress of, like, you say it almost flippantly, like, oh, I had to go find the money, and then I had to, like, but knowing, like,
No, it wasn't
how
flippant.
much money you've already
hard.
spent, you know?
You have to keep going.
I know. It's like, but also I kind of cringe at just kind of like the lack of, and I know you've learned a lot since then, but just back in that time, cringe at, oh my gosh, just like the moving forward and dumping all that money into that building. And I don't know, just like some lack of, I guess it's just lack of experience and lack of like advice, or good advice, I should say.
Well, I didn't know. Number one, I didn't know what I didn't know. Number two, I was caught up in the hype.
Right.
Like, they wanted me. Like, this was a big deal. Like, we got to make this happen.
And I guess in the back of your mind, you're like, I'm going to make the money and it's all going to work out. Like, once we open, we'll start making money.
Oh, no, everybody told me that.
Yeah.
Like, you won't have a problem in Gardendale. We eat.
Yeah.
That's what we do. We eat. And there was also a big push from some of my investors that were from Gardendale. It's like, go big or go home. Like, don't go small. And I'd originally thought, let's just do a smaller place where we don't have so much overhead and so much work to do to get it open.
Right.
But they encouraged me, like, this is a tight-knit community. If you'll do, like, a party room, an event space, you'll have people booking it out for, different organizations, chamber meetings, business meetings, which is how I met you. Fun fact about our Church of the Highlands in Fultondale.
Oh, this is a fun fact.
They did all their meetings and planned the launch of Highlands in Fultondale in Kairos Cafe in Gardendale.
Yeah.
Which, that's neat.
Who told you that? I remember
Blake
somebody
Creel.
Oh, yeah.
The campus pastor.
That's
the
really
one that led the charge of getting that open up here. So that's neat.
That's very cool.
A lot of neat stuff during that time. But let's talk about some of the people that I hired, specifically the one that would make a difference in our lives.
Yes.
That would be a big part of our story.
Okay, so you got open. Obviously, you got the air conditioning working, or new air conditioning.
But during the process, I hired some people.
Okay, so during that process. Okay.
Well, I was going to have a manager, like somebody that could run the books and all the things, because how could I be in two places at one time,
right,
doing all that stuff? And then, just to be honest with you, this opening in Gardendale was in a way for me to, like, get away from Steve and his influence and his family, and just being in, because I don't know if we've made this clear in our talks about Kairos Cafe. It was actually in the same building as the church he pastored.
Right.
So I had a quarter of the building in Birmingham, and then the other 3/4 was the church.
Okay, so question, was that when you said it was to get away, the whole Gardendale thing, was that a conscious thing? Like, is that something you can see now, or did you know that in the moment?
I think both. It's like, I need to get away. I need to be free. Like, I need to break free.
Yeah, you needed some, like, separation. I mean, just in the fact that you had moved in with Tanya and Jeremy's doing all that, there was just no
I've got to break free.
Yeah.
And I saw this as an opportunity to be free and to get out of that. Because it was,
interesting.
I don't know, you start feeling cornered in, and you start feeling tightened in. And what we were doing, we had grown so much in Birmingham to the point that we outgrew our space. But my catering business was just growing and growing and growing and going crazy, actually. And then the lunch business was good too, and it kept growing. But the space that I have for my kitchen couldn't contain it. Mm-hmm. So we ended up, which is crazy to think that a church would let you do this. We ended up buying bigger refrigerators and freezers and putting them in the children's church area. And on Sundays, we just throw a sheet or something over it so it didn't look like. But we started using that back space, which was starting to cause friction with the church. This is our church, and this is where we teach the kids, but then you're back here making cakes.
Right.
It was time for us to do something different.
Yeah.
We were busting at the seams. Mm-hmm. So the idea of the Kairos in Gardendale, the kitchen was 10 times the size, so I could do, so much more.
Yeah.
All the operations were getting moved to Gardendale. The catering operations, all the things that we were going to do, and that was just going to be like the thing where we just did lunch down there. So I could keep a very small staff there. Jeremy was going to stay there and kind of oversee it and still do catering deliveries. And actually, we stopped prepping food there. We started prepping all the food in Gardendale, and every morning he would pick up what he needed to get through a lunch shift and get his catering orders and go from there. So we had a neat plan. It seemed like it was going to work.
Right.
But I needed a manager, and that was when I hired a fiery redhead named Denise Nolan.
Yes. So tell us how she got to you. How did that come to be?
I think I met her actually through social media. I didn't know her.
Really?
It's weird. People would book us all the time to do like events, especially businesses, because we had a neat, I love Chick-fil-A, don't get me wrong. But like usually when you go to like some kind of event where you're trying to do a meet and greet, you get the Chick-fil-A nuggets and a fruit tray.
Yeah.
And people are just wanting something different.
Yeah.
And somebody booked us to do an event. I didn't usually go to them. I just happened to go this day. And it was me and Brandon went to this wine shop and did some kind of meet and greet for this new wine shop. And Denise Nolan worked there. And we met her through that. And then we became friends on social media after that. And she was just somebody that was just... She was just neat. One of those people that was like a magnet.
Yes.
I think she's probably a 7 on the Enneagram.
Yeah.
And just somebody that she's creative and she's a go-getter. Her husband had a photography business. And when we started the process of opening in Gardendale, I found out she lived in Gardendale. And her husband came one night when we were in there cleaning and was like, "What can we do to help?"
Oh, wow.
And I was like, "What do you mean?" She was like, I feel like I want to be involved. And the neat thing about the Kairos Cafe in Gardendale was when I opened, I inherited all the Max's cafeteria stuff. So they had these old booths, these old chairs, and they were like, these chairs had to have come out of the 50s. They were like black chairs with like these bright blue leather or pleather covers. She wanted to redo that. I wanted to use all that stuff, like to keep from buying it.
Yeah. So
we painted the tables. Me and Brandon, Derek and Eric, we spent 2 or 3 days. We went and painted all the tables and then scratched them up because that was the style at that time.
Yeah.
And then put lacquer on them. But she came in and she's got like, Denise now, she's got like a designer's eye.
Right.
She took over the chairs because the chairs had like a little, like the seat of the chair, you could take it off and recover it.
Yeah, yeah.
So she ended up being the designer of the chairs.
Okay, I just need to get this straight. I don't know if I'm just not a giving person, but I cannot imagine walking into a place of someone I had met a couple times and maybe became friends with on social media.
Yeah.
And just been like, I want to help.
Well, she wasn't the only one.
I guess.
She wasn't the only one. I had people drop in all the time when we were renovating that would just want to help.
I would just never think to want to help. I didn't know.
You wouldn't know. I mean,
okay, so
I have the story in my mind about one of your best friends, Crystal Westbrook, when she bought a house. And they were having a painting party, and they invited all the friends over to help paint.
It was just a couple of friends, but yeah.
But you painted like 2 strips on the wall, and you were like, I'll pay somebody to do this.
How much does hiring a painter cost? So we can maybe just go get a margarita and... That's how I can help.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, that's just crazy to me that maybe she just walked in like, we want to help. We feel like we want to be a part. Yeah. So the question is, did you pay her to do the chairs? Or?
No, she just wanted to help.
Oh my gosh.
So she ended up doing, this was like 150 chairs. And she took all the boards home. She picked out the material and she did the curtains and stuff for them. She was a huge part of that.
For free?
Yeah, to begin with.
Golly.
That people were excited that we were coming to Gardendale. And it wasn't just her. I mean, I can think of the mayor would come over and help us when we had a cleaning day. I felt like I was moving into where I was supposed to be.
It was like a movement.
But it was one day during this process, it was about 3 months in, when I just looked at her and said, I know you're probably making more than I could ever pay you, but I would give anything to have you on my team. And she was like, are you serious? And I said, yeah, but I know you love your job. And she said, I hate my job. And I was like, well, then we need to talk. So I set up a meeting with her and her husband. We went in and we made it work. And she came on board as the manager of the Kairos Cafe Gardendale while we were still in renovations and started helping in Birmingham. And just a total game changer for us. Denise was exactly what I needed during that season because she was a breath of fresh air, breath of life. And she didn't have any inner workings with Steve's circles or the church or any of that stuff.
That's what I was going to say. She is a mover and a shaker, number one.
Yeah.
And number two, like what you just said, which was my question, she wasn't connected to any of the...
She was a complete outsider.
Yes.
And I needed an outsider so bad at that time. But also more than that, she's a Jesus follower. And she believed in what we were doing. She believed in the vision, the mission, all things, and she understood and got it.
What a gift.
So she was somebody I knew I could work with. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I've told her this, but I don't even know if she heard me. I never could have got through that process without her. Like, she was a gift for me from Jesus during that season. Because it was so hard getting open. It was so hard. It was, Lord have mercy. But in the middle of that, in the midst of all these things happening, Tanya and Jeremy have been trying to have a baby, and they had a couple miscarriages, so they were going through a really hard season. And it came to a place where their doctors told them, you're not going to be able to have a baby. Mm-hmm. So they went through the process of wanting to adopt. And it was during this season that they got, I don't even know how to say this, like, how do you get matched for adoption? I know they were going through an adoption agency.
Yeah, I mean, I think you
Is it a match? You get a match?
I think so. I'm not an expert, but yeah.
Well, they got a match with these two beautiful little boys, twin boys, that were in Mississippi, and the social workers or whoever, I think they were in foster care, thought it was a good match, and they began the process of, they made them go somewhere and spend the weekend with them where they could watch, and it was a beautiful, beautiful process. But in the end, they decided that was what they were supposed to do. Those were their sons, and they started the process of adopting these boys. But when I think it's because they were in foster care, like, it's a lot more involvement going on, and they have to come into the house and or maybe they do that every time, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget. I need to quit saying I'll never forget, but I'll never forget this. This was so huge to me. I was praying for Tanya. Because Jeremy was having a struggle with this, but Tanya was specific, a mama wanting to have babies. And I just felt like that Jesus just showed me or spoke to me. I don't even know how I knew this. Like, those boys are their sons. They're supposed to be, but they're going to have kids. And
you mean they were going to have other kids?
That Tanya and Jeremy were going to have kids too. Right. And I ran up the stairs and knocked on the door and went in. And I told her that, and I was like, I don't talk like that. So I really felt like he told me that. But long story short, 5-6 years down the line, they did. So that was just so.
Yeah, that is really neat.
But whoever comes in, the social workers and does all the stuff, they come in, and technically I lived in their house, and they wanted to, like, scan me or whatever.
Scan you.
I don't know. I don't know what they wanted to do.
Yeah, but background check of some sort. Yeah.
But I know my background.
Right.
Yeah. I have felonies.
Not good. Yeah.
I have felonies. It's not anything that would affect a child,
right? But
still, and I didn't want to go through that process, so it was like I need to go somewhere else,
right?
And but I felt like I knew that was what I was supposed to do.
Yeah, that it was time.
Yeah, and even though I love, that was one of my favorite apartments I ever had as a single person because it was small. I didn't have to take care of the yard. I didn't have to do anything, and I thought, well, I'm never going to live in Gardendale, but I need to. While we're going through this renovation process, doing all these things in the first maybe year that we're open, I need to live up there just for, gas, mileage going back and forth. So Denise Nolan, she was on my team at that time. I was like, help me find a place to live. I don't want to live in an apartment because I don't want neighbors that close. But like a little house, a little duplex, like this setup I got with Tony and Jeremy, this basement apartment thing, I would love something like that. So Denise was the kind of person, not just as somebody that's on your team or somebody that worked for me, just as a friend.
Right.
Like you can give her something and she'll put together a plan and put it together and let's go execute and do that. She's kind of like you. She's very much like you in that. Like, go get her, getting stuff done. So she planned out a full afternoon for us to go look at places to live. And we, I think we're about 2 months out from our opening date. We looked at a bunch of places. Like one of them was like this block house, like on the outskirts of Gardendale. And I was trying to say, oh, I wonder if I could make this work. Because I wasn't in a place where I had a lot of personal finances, and I wasn't fixing to buy a house or do any of that stuff.
Well, yeah, you had just sunk how much money into that business to open it?
$378,000. I didn't like any of the places that we found. Like everything I looked at, this one, I was trying to make my mind say, I can make this work. I can make this work.
Right.
And I can't even remember where this is now. It's on the outskirts of Gardendale. And a young man lived in the neighborhood, came running out, and he was like, hey, I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but don't move in that house. It's got rats and bugs, and he was telling me everything wrong with it. So I was like, okay, let's just go. And we got back in the car. We didn't have anywhere else to look. And I thought, I guess I'm going to have to settle into living in like an apartment. And there's nothing wrong with living in apartments if you want to. I just know I don't like apartment living. I don't want all those neighbors and all the things. And we were coming down Decatur Highway in Gardendale, and she said, well, my friend has a cute little house for sale behind McDonald's. And I said, well, I can't buy a house. And she said, well, let's just go look at it. And she told Jeremy where to turn. He turned left on the Gardendale Drive, took a ride on the Pecan Avenue.
Pecan Avenue.
And I was like, no, it was just like I sensed like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, no, I mean, this is like full circle.
Gardendale.
No, but like full circle. This is, I grew up trying to get away from like small town stuff, but I just fell in love with Gardendale.
Gardendale to Pecan.
Pecan Avenue, take a left on the Gardendale Drive, and we go down to the end to Alma Avenue. They took a right. We pull up, and it's this little blue house. And I said, that's my house. Like, I just knew. And we pulled in, and I mean, it was not a big lot. It was like a quarter acre maybe, and it was a small 2-bedroom. And we got out and looked in the windows, and it had like black tile in the kitchen and stainless steel and hardwood floors. And I was like, this is it. This is my house. And she was like, hey, they ain't trying to rent it. It's for sale. So I said, I need to look. I said, just bear with me. I need to look on the inside. And so she called her friend. I shouldn't say her name. So she called her friend. Her friend said, I can't let you go in the house if I'm not there. I'll get in trouble. But she talked her into giving the code for the door. And we went in. But when I walked in, I knew that was my house. But I knew I couldn't buy a house right then. So the real estate lady was very close friends with Denise. She let something slip, which helped me with my strategy. What she let slip was that the lady that owned the house, her and her husband got married, had a baby, got a divorce. She bought that house. Her husband bought another house, and then they got back together. So now they had 2 houses, 2 mortgages, and they couldn't pay the mortgage. And they were on the verge of, if they didn't sell it by the end of that month, were going to go into foreclosure. And so I was like, okay, I just need the name of the lady. And I called her, and she was like adamant. I'm not trying to rent. I'm trying to sell. I don't want to rent. And so we went back and forth for 3 or 4 days. I came up with what we called a lease purchase. I called my aunt in Phoenix City, who was a real estate person. I came up with a lease purchase where I would lease it from her for 1 year, because I thought I was going to be there for a year and leave.
Yeah.
I didn't think I would stay there. And at the end of the year, everything I paid in rent would go towards the price of the house, but I would, cover her mortgage. And then she was just adamant about it. I don't want to fool with this. I want this off my plate. So we set up a thing where I would automatically deposit the mortgage payment in her bank account, and that it would be an auto thing. Like, she'd never even have to touch anything. And then the last thing that I put in there, anything up to $10,000, if anything happens, I'll take care of it myself. So long story short, I got the house. I knew that it was my house.
Wow.
And it's so crazy to think back on that now, that I would end up living in that house longer than I've ever lived anywhere my whole life.
And really, like, how it started as an impossibility, that somehow it all
worked out. Everything just fell into place. And it was crazy, but little did I know I would bring my wife to that
I was
house.
going to say, I feel like I want to give a spoiler alert, but
Yeah.
there's so much in between there. But
Yeah.
that.
I would bring my wife to the house. I would bring my first child, Lulu May, to the house. And then in
And your second and third child.
2016, I would bring my twin boys into that house. And with the life that we lived, I don't know. Let's don't get too far ahead.
Yeah.
But it was...
Okay.
It was the neatest thing for me was just standing in front of that house and knowing that was my house. Mm-hmm. And that was where I was supposed to be. And it was small, so I couldn't figure out, why are you so excited about a little bitty house? It was only 800 square feet. But it was in a...
But it was just you at that time.
I know, but I was just so excited about it. I was like, I just knew it was my house.
Right.
But if I could have seen everything that would come after that, I would have understood, but I didn't understand at the time.
Right. Which is funny to me. I'm just like a little pause on this story.
Yeah.
That you had the same knowing about the house we live in now.
Oh, yeah.
Which was, this is the house we have after that house.
Yeah.
So this is only our second house. But you had that same kind of like, I just know that that's our house.
Yeah, I did.
That's kind of neat.
It is. It's cool. But anyways, I made another neat hire during that time.
Okay.
Somebody that became just a dear friend to me. Joey Moe.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He was somebody that was was following us on social media, and he was a young kid that had just lost his job, and he was just in a bad place, like financially.
What does the Mo come from?
Oh, his name is actually, I'll call him and ask him if I can put his name here, but his name is Joey Hasty.
Okay.
But in high school, he had a mohawk.
Oh.
So he became Joey Moe.
Okay, because I actually did not know his last name. I've only known him as Joey Mo.
Yeah, he became Joey Moe because he had a mohawk, and that stuck to him to this day. People still know him as Joey Moe. And but I hired him to help us with the renovations, and he was in just a place where his place went out of business, and he was owned his own house.
At a crossroad.
Yeah, but he was a young guy, but he was a hustler. He was a go-getter, and there was something about his story. I forget. We connected because he had been engaged and then got unengaged, and then he had some issues with his dad, and so it was like same. And I don't know, something about hiring him. He just became like one of those, like he's supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And so I love that part of the Gardendale story.
Mm-hmm.
And, he would move on later on. He'd become a police officer, and he still is. And fun fact, move forward.
I was going to say, a little pause and glimpse into the present day.
Yeah, 10, 12 years. My son Royal and his son Tucker are in the same class in pre-K.
Yeah.
Which is
cool.
Amazing to me. Like, it's like, wow, like who would have ever, thought that?
Okay, so all things are kind of in place. I know it's been a struggle, but like the day you opened, finally, what was that like?
It was a gangster push to get finished because people don't know. There's just so much you got to do. There's so many hurdles to open in a food service operation. So many hoops you got to jump through.
So many details too, I can imagine.
Oh, wow. And then, but you're so tired, you get to the end, you get all your approvals because you have to get the health department, the county, the city. In this point, the city was really easy to work with.
Right.
I could just call the mayor and say, this little man is bothering me. But we had hired our staff. We had 20 plus people working. We had a trial run. I didn't want to be overwhelmed with business. Mm-hmm. So I was going to do what you call a soft opening and do a grand opening later on.
Okay, so I came in that soft opening day.
You did?
Yeah, we didn't know each other, for those of you that are listening. But I remember because I was hearing y'all are open. I was starting my little networking group.
I didn't put it out that we were opening because I didn't want a grand opening on day one because I knew we had to work the kinks out. So I put it out on the Kairos Cafe Facebook page at 10:30 the night before, like right before I went to bed. Oh, P.S. We're opening tomorrow. And I thought that it wouldn't unleash the torrent of people, but it did.
Well, I think I drove by and saw her or something, but I remember walking by like, open, like, well, not really. And sure enough, Charlotte Guffin.
She was my first customer.
Yeah, and also Faith Harper.
They were my first customers.
Kind of full circle, too, because Faith Harper, who's a realtor around here, she's actually the one that helped my parents when they first moved in, try to find a house and property.
That is so
and
neat.
So I did know Faith, who she was through that.
Yeah.
And Charlotte, I didn't really know, but I saw them there. Well, not really open yet, but it's funny that I walked in that day. I didn't eat.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Anyway.
Well, opening day was amazing and scary, and it was literally they had to call the police in to direct traffic. I never knew that.
On the soft opening day?
Yeah. It was, I never knew that many people would want to eat food that I created. I didn't see that coming like that. And it would be like that for the next 6 to 8 weeks where just to give you some context, my Wood Fruitiker, my people that give me my food that I buy my product from.
Right. Your wholesale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We would get a delivery from them in Birmingham once a week. That would get us through the week. I was having to get a delivery from them every day because we couldn't hold, like we were literally prepping, Lord, it was crazy. But I was so tired too. It was just, oh my Lord. It was a lot. It was, but it was so exciting. Like seeing that, like we've got like
well, especially all the work and all the time that led up to finally.
It was like
opening.
Disney World.
Yeah.
Like it was crazy. But
neat.
we were cranking out. Oh my God. I don't even know what to say. It was a lot. It was a very lot. That first day. Actually, the first day, the first week, the first month, the first 6 weeks, 8 weeks, it was never seen anything like it. You would have thought I was selling crack. It was crazy.
Crack.
It was crazy.
Of all things to compare it to. Yeah.
But we're here. We're in Gardendale, and let's pause on this note. Let's close out with this. So it was my first couple of weeks that I was open. One of my bank loans went through, but I had to fax. You have to fax so many things. Like now they let you email stuff, or you can scan and fax stuff with your phone. But this was 2012 when you still had to physically use a fax machine. I knew nothing about Gardendale other than, my house was 2 blocks away. I knew in between there. I had to fax these documents, and it was literally almost 40 pages of different stuff that I had to do. So I walked up to the cash register where Denise Nolan was working, and I said, "Where's a Kinko's at in Gardendale?" And she said, "We don't have a Kinko's." And, in them days, are Kinko's still around?
I don't know. I think so.
Well, where I lived, south of Birmingham, you went to Kinko's, you did faxes, you did copies, you did all the things. And she said, "Oh, we don't have one of those." And I was annoyed, "Well, where do y'all do faxes?" And she was like, "I don't know. I don't know what to tell you." So I was thinking I'm going to have to drive 30, 40 minutes to Hoover to get this fax in. And there was a young lady standing at the cash register, and it was you.
Oh.
And you said, oh, wait. You can use my fax. And I said, no, it's
You can use my fax.
And I said, no, it's just a lot, 40 pages. And you're like, "No, it's perfectly fine. And my office is just right here." And I said, "No, I'm good." And do you remember?
I do remember because I had actually come in to talk to Denise or you or whoever about coming to my networking group and just checking out because I'd heard of the new restaurant, and I was, of course, recruiting businesses.
Yeah.
And I just happened to be standing there talking to her when you walked up and asked about the facts. And remember from last episode, I was working for my dad in his office, pretty big office, right down the street from where you were.
2 blocks away.
And when you were talking about the fax machine, it was just I'm a connector. I'm like, "Oh, you can use my fax." I'm going to say it like that. But
you wanted me to use your fax.
Well, no, it was just "Oh, you need something. That's very easy. There, you can just use our fax. It's a lot of pages." I do remember you saying that, and I was like, "Oh, that's no problem at all. You can just come down and so." I remember you looking at me. It's funny because I haven't thought about this in a while, but I remember you looking at me like, "Are you sure?" I don't know, with these eyes, is there more?
There was more.
Or it was more just "Are you trying to get more than just a fax?"
You were.
It's not. At that point, I genuinely was not.
Okay,
so I had heard the story of the guy who's had opened a restaurant who had been in prison.
Yeah.
And got saved in prison. That's kind of intriguing. But genuinely at that point, me, I was hustling out the marketing business thing, starting this networking group.
But I also know women and their body language, you were very excited for me to fax with you.
Oh my gosh. That is... I don't even have words right now. You were very excited for me to That is not how I was feeling.
Anyways, bottom line was
I was vibing because I do vibe.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a natural hey, I'm here kind of vibe.
But you were honestly, you were out of my league. You're like a business person. Like you were one of those girls.
Well, you thought
Uptown girl. But anyways, I did the facts. But when I got to the office, I took you up on the offer.
I feel like it sounds like we're speaking in code, but we're not.
No.
You actually went to do the facts.
I went to do the facts at the office, but when I got there, you weren't there. So I was like, oh, maybe I was misreading that. But you got to understand, I was only 4 months off of breaking off an engagement with Karina.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't wanting a relationship with anybody.
Yeah.
I was determined, like, I ain't getting involved. No, I'm gonna have a relationship with my business, with my customers. But when I got there, you weren't there, which did make me think, well, maybe I did read that situation different than what I thought. But I met your dad, and he passed my papers off to a worker. I don't even know who it was.
A worker.
He just said, oh, she'll handle that. You sit here and talk to me.
Yeah.
And he pulled me in his office, which I don't even know if that was his office. That doesn't matter. He pulled me into one of the front offices there.
Yeah.
And I was intrigued. He collected signs, like old signs. And I collect signs. But you could tell that they were real signs. Because some people have the old signs, but they're the ones that they printed on a computer.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I love the signs. Like, because I do. I'm a sign. I don't know. I just love old signs. We had a talk. We ended up talking for about 40 minutes. For whatever reason, the girl doing the faxes, it took her forever to get done. And that is one of the most... looking back on that now, if I would have only known what I know now, I would have asked him so many other questions. But I didn't. I didn't know what I didn't know. But that would be the only conversation that I ever had with your dad. Because right after that, he passed away.
Yeah.
So, but I think we need to segue into that. That was a huge part of your story, your dad passing away. And then right during that time, it was when my granny passed away. So it was like, there was a lot of pain, a lot of, that just changed things for both of us. And by the time I met you and, things started working out, you were the greatest gift to me at that time. And I think I was a really big gift to you at that time too. So
for sure.
Let's segue into that and we'll do that in the next episode.
So we'll close out by saying the worlds have officially collided. Our worlds, yeah.
Or bumped.
Or bumped, yeah.
We bumped into
whatever.
each other.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. I'm in Gardendale. Haley's in Gardendale. Time to rock and roll.
So it begins.
See what happens.
All right, guys.
See you soon.
Bye.
Well, hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the podcast.
Written and produced by the Teen Jones Company.
Yours truly, James and Haley Jones.
If you like what you've heard, you can subscribe to all of our podcasts.
Download the Patreon app. You can get all of our content early and ad-free. Straight Out of Prison, The For Real, and Narrowing the Gap. There's a specialized feed there for all subscribers. You'll get downloads, updates, exclusive contents, live Q&As, and more.
Or head over to teamjones.co/podcast and click on the Become a Patron button.
And I'll also put that in the show notes.
Other ways you can support us is to like and share, leave a rating and review, and support our sponsors. They help us provide this platform for free.
Listen on Apple, Google, Amazon Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.
And thank you again for being a part of our story.
Oh, I love that.
Anything out of these videos, please hit the like button to subscribe. If you never want to miss a recipe or anything I do, hit the little bell and you'll get notifications.